I have a question for you to start today.
Okay, let's hear it.
Have you ever looked back at a decision you made? I don't know, maybe it was a purchase, maybe a hire, maybe just an argument you started, and you honestly asked yourself, who was driving the car?
Who was driving the car? That is a terrifyingly familiar question.
It is, right, because in the moment, you felt completely in control. You felt rational.
Well, absolutely. Like you had all the facts lined up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, 20 minutes later, maybe 2 weeks later, you look at the wreckage and you just think, I must have been possessed.
It's the universal human experience, isn't it? We all have that moment where we feel like a spectator to our own stupidity. We look back at our actions and they just don't seem to match our identity as smart, logical people.
Exactly. It feels like a glitch in the software. You know, like I'm a rational person, I have a brain, I use logic. Why did I just buy a timeshare?
Yes.
Well, today we are digging into a deck of research that suggests that glitch isn't a glitch at all. It's actually a feature.
It is a core feature. And to understand it, we're not just looking at self-help platitudes today. We are looking at what I would honestly consider the operating manual for the human mind.
We are doing a deep dive into Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And I really want to set the stage here because this isn't just another pop psychology book you grab at the airport.
No, not at all. This is a heavyweight, a titan of a book.
Daniel Kahneman passed away recently, but his legacy is just monumental. He was a psychologist, but here's the kicker, right?
The Nobel Prize.
He won the Nobel Prize in economics.
In economics.
That's such a weird crossover, isn't it? It's like a biologist winning a Grammy.
It's incredibly rare. And it really signals the weight of this work. See, before Kahneman and his research partner, Amos Tversky, we have to mention him, economics was built on a kind of fantasy.
Okay.
It was built on the idea of the rational agent.
Right. Homo economicus. I've heard this term.
Exactly. The idea that humans are these logical, selfish, consistent calculators. That if you give a human information, they will process it like a computer and make the choice that maximizes their own utility.
The guy who never overeats, never procrastinates, always balances his checkbook perfectly.
And always makes the optimal investment choice, yes. And Kahneman basically looked at that model and said, have you ever actually met a human being?
Right.
His work proved, with just rigorous data, that we are not rational agents. But, and this is the key, we aren't just irrational in random, chaotic ways.
Okay, that's an important distinction.
It's everything. We are irrational in predictable ways. We make the same mistakes at the same times for the very same reasons.
So that's the mission for this deep dive then. We're not just looking for life hacks. We're trying to understand the machinery. We want to uncover those predictable errors that every single one of us makes, not because we're dumb, but because of how our brains are wired.
Predictable is the key word. Kahneman's thesis isn't that we're broken. It's that we are running evolutionary software that hasn't had a firmware update in about 50,000 years.
Wow. Okay, so let's unpack this machinery. The core metaphor of the book, and honestly has become one of the most famous metaphors in modern science, is this drama between two characters living inside our heads. He calls them System 1 and System 2.
And this is the foundation for everything else we'll discuss today. If you don't get this distinction, none of the rest of it really clicks into place.
Okay, let's introduce the cast. First up, System 1, the fast thinker. Who is this guy?
System 1 is your autopilot. It is automatic, it is intuitive, and it is largely unconscious. It operates with zero effort.
Zero effort?
None. When you look at a person's face and instantly realize they're angry, that's System 1. You didn't have to calculate the angle of their eyebrows or the redness of their skin.
And you just knew.
You just knew, instantly.
It's the part of me that answers 2 + 2 before I've even finished asking the question.
Precisely. It's pattern recognition. And it is incredibly, blindingly fast. Evolutionarily speaking, this is our oldest software.
The original operating system.
Exactly. If you're a hunter-gatherer and you hear a rustle in the grass, you don't want to sit down and run a statistical analysis on the probability of it being a lion versus, I don't know, a gazelle.
You want to run.
You want to run. System 1 is designed for survival. It prioritizes speed and efficiency above absolutely everything else.
So it's the impulsive hero of the movie. It reacts. It saves the day when a car swerves into your lane.
Yes, but the trade-off for that speed is that it plays fast and loose with the facts.
Oh.
It is highly, highly vulnerable to bias and error because it loves shortcuts.
Oh, okay.
It wants a quick answer much more than it wants the right answer. It sees the world through a straw, basically, ignoring everything that isn't immediately visible or emotionally charged.
Okay, so that's the speed demon. Then we have System 2, the slow thinker. This is the one we usually identify with, right? The me.
Yes. System 2 is the conscious reasoning self. It is deliberate, analytical, and logical. It handles the complex decisions. It allocates attention to the effortful mental activities that demand it.
Give me a pure System 2 task.
Okay. If I ask you right now, what is 17 times 24?
Okay, yeah.
What happens? System 1 just shuts down. It has no idea. The answer doesn't just pop into your head like 2 plus 2 does.
No, not at all. And I can feel that shift. It's actually painful. I have to stop walking. I might close my eyes, visualize the numbers. It takes actual work.
That effort is the defining characteristic of System 2. It requires attention. If you're distracted or tired or, drunk, System 2 creates a bottleneck. It cannot multitask well.
Right.
You cannot multiply 17 by 24 while making a left turn in heavy traffic. You will either stop calculating or you will crash the car. One or the other.
So on paper, System 2 sounds like the hero. It's the rational adult in the room. System 1 is the impulsive toddler.
That's how we like to think of it.
But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the central drama Kahneman describes. The relationship between them is not what we think it is.
This is the critical conflict. We love to think that we are System 2, that we're the captain of the ship, rational and in control, and that System 1 is just some helper that runs the breathing and the walking in the background.
But it's the other way around.
It is absolutely the other way around. Kahneman argues that System 1 runs the show something like 95% of the time. System 2 is the supervisor, but it's a very, very lazy supervisor.
Lazy is the word he uses a lot, isn't it? I noticed that.
He does, and he doesn't mean it in a judgmental way, like calling someone a couch potato. He means it in a biological sense.
What do you mean?
Thinking slowly burns calories. It consumed glucose. The brain makes up about 2% of our body weight, but it consumes 20% of our energy. Evolution hates wasting energy.
So laziness is efficiency.
It's an energy conservation strategy. System 2 operates under a law of least effort. It will usually just accept whatever suggestion System 1 tosses up without ever checking the math.
So System 1 says, hey, that person looks trustworthy, and System 2, instead of doing a background check, just goes, sounds good to me. Let's sign the contract.
Precisely. System 2 often acts as a mere rubber stamp for System 1's intuition. We believe our decisions are based on careful reasoning, but often that reasoning is just a post hoc rationalization for a snap judgment System 1 already made.
So System 2 is the press secretary for System 1.
That's a perfect analogy. It explains the decision after the fact. It doesn't actually make it.
That is a little bit terrifying. It means we're walking around thinking we're these logical supercomputers, but mostly we're just reacting to feelings and patterns and then making up stories to explain why.
That is the core of Kahneman's work. He's telling us that the rational agent model of humanity is a complete fantasy. We are machinery that is prone to glitches. And because System 2 is so lazy, we often don't even notice the glitches happening.
Well, let's look at those glitches. Because Kahneman doesn't just say we make mistakes. He categorizes them. He calls them heuristics, which is kind of a fancy word for mental shortcuts.
A heuristic is really just a rule of thumb. It's a shortcut System 1 uses to solve a complex problem quickly. And the way it does it is by substitution.
Substitution.
Instead of answering the hard question you were asked, System 1 substitutes an easier question and answers that instead. And most of the time, they work. They keep us alive. But when they fail in these predictable ways we call cognitive biases.
Okay, let's run through the big ones. The first one he talks about is the anchoring effect. This one blew my mind because I see it everywhere now, especially in sales and marketing.
Anchoring is absolutely fascinating. It basically says that the first piece of information you receive, the anchor, heavily influences your final decision, even if that information is completely and utterly irrelevant.
The classic example is negotiation, right?
Yeah.
If I'm selling a house and I list it for some crazy high number, that number becomes the anchor.
Exactly. Let's say a house is objectively worth $500,000. If I list it at $500,000, offers will probably come in around there.
Sure.
But if I list it at $1 million, even if everyone knows that's a ridiculous price, the final sale price will likely be significantly higher than $500,000.
Why? Why does that work?
Because the buyer's System 1 locks onto that initial number. All subsequent adjustments are made away from that anchor, but because System 2 is lazy, the adjustments stop way too soon. The anchor exerts a gravitational pull.
It pulls a judgment toward it like a magnet. I remember reading about this wild study, I think it was one of Kahneman's, where they had judges roll a pair of dice before sentencing a criminal.
Yes, this is one of the most disturbing examples in the entire book. They gathered experienced German judges. These are professionals who pride themselves on being impartial and rational.
Right.
They all read the same case file about a shoplifter. But before they gave the sentence, the researchers had them spin a wheel of fortune.
A wheel of fortune? In a courtroom experiment, that's bizarre.
It is. And the wheel was rigged. It was rigged to start on either the number 10 or the number 65. Now, the judges knew this was random. It had absolutely nothing to do with the shoplifting case.
So a rational system, too, would just completely ignore the number.
Of course. But that's not what happened. After spinning the wheel, they asked the judges to recommend a sentence for the shoplifter. The judges who rolled a 10 gave an average sentence of 25 months.
Okay.
The judges who rolled a 65 gave an average sentence of 45 months.
No way. That is terrifying. That's nearly double the prison time just because a random wheel stopped on a higher number.
It shows that even experts are not immune. Their system 1 saw a number 65 and it just primed the brain for highness. So when System 2 came in to decide the sentence, it started its calculations from a much higher baseline, unconsciously.
So next time I'm negotiating a salary, I should just throw out a massive number first?
Yeah.
Even if it's kind of a joke?
Surprisingly, yes. Even if you say something like, well, I normally charge $1 million an hour, and you laugh, you have set the anchor. It completely resets the scale of the conversation.
Wow. Okay, let's move to the next glitch. The availability heuristic. This one, I think, explains why I'm terrified of shark attacks, but I'll happily text while crossing a busy street.
The availability heuristic is another substitution game. When you're trying to estimate how likely something is, let's say a shark attack system 2 should look at statistics. It should look at the base rate of shark attacks per swimmer per year.
But that's hard work. That requires, like, a Google search.
And System 2 is lazy. So System 1 swaps in an easier question. It asks, how easily can I remember an example of a shark attack?
And since I just saw Jaws on TV or heard about an attack on the news, the memory is vivid. It's right there on the surface of my mind.
It's available. And if you can recall it easily, your brain makes the leap and assumes it must happen frequently. This is why we overestimate the risk of dramatic, vivid events like plane crashes, terrorism, or tornadoes.
Because they're on the news.
They are highly publicized and visually intense. Meanwhile, we vastly underestimate the boring, silent killers like heart disease, diabetes, or stroke.
Because nobody makes a summer blockbuster movie about high cholesterol.
Exactly. Dramatic events are available to our memory. Boring statistics are not. It's like our internal risk calculator is completely broken because it's fed by the evening news rather than by actual data table.
And this has huge implications for everything from public policy to our own personal anxiety. We spend billions of dollars fighting the things that scare us rather than the things that actually kill us.
It creates a massive distortion in our perception of reality. We end up living in a world constructed by the availability of information, not the truth of it.
Speaking of believing what we want to believe, let's talk about confirmation bias. I feel like this is the one everybody kind of knows, but Kahneman gives it a very specific twist.
He does. We often think of confirmation bias as just, seeking out people who agree with us, like only watching one news channel. But Kahneman describes it as a fundamental flaw in how the brain actually processes data.
Okay, how so?
When we have a belief, our brain acts like a lawyer for that belief, not like a judge.
A lawyer, not a judge. I like that distinction. Tell me more.
A judge is supposed to look at all the evidence impartially and then form a conclusion. A lawyer starts with the conclusion, my client is innocent, and then goes looking for any evidence to support it, while simultaneously trying to discredit or ignore any evidence that hurts the case.
So if I believe that, say, remote work is bad for productivity, and I see one article about a CEO calling people back to the office.
Your System 1 lights up and says, see, I knew it. Here's the proof.
And I accept that evidence instantly. It feels good. It fits my story.
Yes. But if you see a detailed scientific study that says remote workers are actually 10% more productive, your System 2 suddenly wakes up. It becomes a rigorous, skeptical scientist.
And then I start saying, well, let's look at the methodology here. Who funded this study? Was the sample size large enough? This seems flawed.
Exactly. You apply a double standard to the evidence. We accept confirming evidence at face value, no questions asked, and we subject disconfirming evidence to the most rigorous scrutiny imaginable.
This is why you can't win an argument on the internet with facts.
You can't. The other person isn't looking at your facts as data points to be considered. They're looking at them as enemy missiles to be shot down.
And then there's the halo effect. This one really feels like high school never ended.
It really, really does. The halo effect is the tendency to like or dislike everything about a person, including things you have not observed at all, based on one single dominant trait.
So if someone is good-looking and confident,
We automatically assume they are also intelligent, kind, and competent. System 1 absolutely loves consistency. It hates ambiguity.
it wants a simple story.
It's much too hard for the brain to hold the complex idea that this person is handsome, but also, incompetent. That creates cognitive dissonance. It's much easier for System 1 to tell a simple, coherent story. He is handsome, therefore he is good.
This has to be an absolute nightmare for hiring managers.
It is the single biggest problem in interviews. If a candidate walks in, they smile, they give a firm handshake, they look the part. The interviewer's System 1 makes a decision in the first 30 seconds.
And the rest of the interview.
The rest of the hour-long interview is just the interviewer's System 2, looking for evidence to confirm that initial first impression. It's confirmation bias driven by the halo effect.
So if we step back and look at this whole section, the key insight seems to be about confidence. We think confidence means we're right, but it's just a feeling.
Yes, that is a crucial takeaway from the book. Confidence is a feeling, not a metric of accuracy. Confidence comes from the coherence of the story your System 1 has built, not from the quality of the evidence supporting that story.
Wow.
You can be 100% confident and 100% wrong because your System 1 has constructed a very smooth, easy-to-believe narrative based on terrible, incomplete data. Kahneman calls this WISEAD.
WYSID. What's that stand for?
What you see is all there is.
Oh.
System 1 can only work with the information that's right in front of it. It never asks, what important evidence am I missing? It just takes the 3 facts it has and builds a bridge to a conclusion, regardless of whether that bridge is stable.
That leads us perfectly into the next big theme of the book, which is the illusion of understanding. Because we're not just bad at math and statistics, we are completely addicted to stories.
We are narrative machines. Kahneman calls this the narrative fallacy. We have this desperate, innate need to make sense of the world. But the world is actually chaotic, random, and incredibly messy.
And our brains can't handle that.
The human mind cannot handle that. It induces deep anxiety. So we create these simple cause and effect stories to explain things after the fact.
I think he has a line in the book, something like, the mind prefers a simple story over a true one.
Exactly. Think about how we talk about business success. We look at a massive company like Google or Apple. We say, oh, they succeeded because of this brilliant visionary strategy and this specific corporate culture.
And we write dozens of books about it. The
Yeah.
7 Habits of Highly Effective Companies, that kind of thing.
Right. But we conveniently ignore the massive role of luck, of timing, of pure random circumstance. We create a story that makes success look inevitable in hindsight.
Why do we do that?
Because if it's inevitable, then we can replicate it. If success is a formula, we can learn it. If it's just luck, then we're helpless. And the narrative fallacy gives us a false but comforting sense of control.
And nowhere is this illusion of control more dangerous than when we talk about experts.
Oh, yeah.
This is a spicy part of the book. Kahneman really goes after the concept of professional intuition. He basically says a lot of so-called experts are faking it, even if they don't know they are.
He draws a very important distinction between 2 types of environments. And this is critical if you want to know when to trust your gut and when to ignore it. He says expert intuition is real, but only in highly predictable environments where you get immediate and clear feedback.
Like a firefighter or a chess master.
Perfect examples. A chess player makes a move, the opponent responds. Immediate feedback. An anesthesiologist gives a drug, the patient's vitals change, immediate feedback. A firefighter enters a burning building, the floor feels spongy, his gut screams, "Get out," and he leaves just before it collapses.
That's real intuition.
That is valid expert intuition. He has experienced that situation thousands of times. The laws of physics haven't changed, and he gets immediate feedback on whether he was right or wrong. His System 1 has learned the pattern through massive repetition.
Okay, so who are the fake experts then?
They are the people operating in chaotic, low-validity environments.
Like what?
Stock pickers, political pundits, long-term economic forecasters, relationship counselors.
Ouch. That's a big list.
In these fields, the rules change constantly. History doesn't repeat itself perfectly. There are too many variables. Kahneman cites study after study showing that, for example, expert stock pickers perform no better than random chance over the long run.
He has that famous line about the chimpanzees.
Yes, that a group of chimpanzees throwing darts at the stock pages would, on average, do just as well as the most highly paid experts on Wall Street.
But if you talk to these stock pickers, they aren't humble about it. They are incredibly confident in their abilities.
And there's that confidence trap again. This is the paradox. As these experts get more experienced, they get more confident, but they don't get any more accurate.
So their confidence grows, but their skill doesn't.
Exactly. They just get better at explaining away their failures with more complex stories, more narrative fallacies.
Oh, I would have been right about the market crash, but then this completely unexpected geopolitical event happened.
Precisely. I wasn't wrong. I was just unlucky. But when they win, of course, it's always skill, never luck.
So if you're listening to a pundit on TV, predict what the election or the stock market will look like 3 years from now.
You should treat it as entertainment, not as information. Their system one is building a coherent story, but there is no stable, predictable pattern for them to actually learn from.
All right, let's pivot to the section of the book that actually won Kahneman the Nobel Prize, prospect theory. This sounds super academic, but it explains so much about why we handle money and life in general so poorly.
This is the real heavy hitter. Before Kahneman, as we said, economic theory assumed that humans were rational utility maximizers. And part of that was the idea that we judge decisions based on the final outcome of our wealth.
So having $5 million is having $5 million no matter how I got there.
Right. To a traditional economist, if you have $5 million, you are equally happy whether you started with $1 million and gained $4 million, or if you started with $10 million and lost $5 million.
But those two scenarios feel completely, totally different. The first one feels like a massive triumph, and the second one feels like an absolute disaster.
Exactly, and that feeling is what Kahneman proved. We don't care about absolute states of wealth. We care about changes about gains and losses relative to some reference point. And more importantly, we feel gains and losses very, very differently.
And this is the core of it. Loss aversion.
Yes. The central truth of prospect theory, the one that changed economics forever, is that losses loom larger than gains.
Can you put a number on it for me? How much larger?
The research suggests the psychological ratio is about 2 to 1. The emotional pain of losing $100 is roughly twice as intense as the emotional pleasure of winning $100.
So if I find a $100 bill on the street, I'm happy.
Right.
But if I drop $100 out of my pocket, I'm absolutely devastated.
And it would take finding $200 just to get you back to emotional neutral.
Wow.
Exactly. And this asymmetry, this fear of loss, drives all sorts of irrational behavior. It makes us incredibly conservative when we have something to protect. We pass up great opportunities because the fear of losing what we have outweighs the potential for a much larger gain.
We stick with bad jobs or bad relationships.
For sure. Because the fear of the loss of stability, even if it's a miserable stability, is greater than the hope of a better future. The known pain is less scary than the unknown.
But wait. The book also talks about how this flips on its head when we're in trouble. This is the risk asymmetry, right?
Yes. This is where it gets really dangerous. When we are facing a sure gain, we are risk averse. We take the sure thing.
So if you offer me a guaranteed $500 or a 50-50 chance at $1,100, I'll probably take the $500.
Most people do, even though the gamble has a higher expected value. But, and here's the flip, when we are facing a sure loss, we become risk-seeking.
Can you give me an example of that?
Okay, imagine you're at the casino. You've lost $1,000. You are in the hole. You have two choices. Choice A, walk away and accept the $1,000 loss. It's a sure thing.
Okay, that feels terrible.
Choice B, make one more big, risky bet. It gives you a chance to win it all back and break even, but also a chance to lose another $1,000, putting you $2,000 in the hole.
A rational person would cut their losses and take the sure loss, but because the pain of that guaranteed $1,000 loss is so intense.
We become gamblers. We hate the certainty of the loss so much that we will take huge risks just to avoid having to lock it in. We chase our losses. We dig the hole deeper.
This explains so much about the stock market. It explains why traders hold on to losing stocks for way too long, hoping they'll bounce back.
And why generals fight losing wars long after they should have retreated. They are gambling on a miracle to avoid the pain of admitting defeat. They are throwing good money after bad, or in the case of war, throwing good lives after bad.
It's the sunk cost fallacy on steroids.
Precisely. We are psychologically terrified of admitting defeat and accepting a loss. Our system one screams, don't let it end on a loss.
This connects so well to the next section, which I found the most philosophical and maybe the most profound. It's about how we experience our lives versus how we remember them. He calls it the two selves.
This is a really deep distinction. Kahneman argues we don't have one unified self. We actually have two selves that are often in conflict, the experiencing self and the remembering self.
Okay, break them down for me.
The experiencing self is the you that is here right now in this moment. It answers the question, how do you feel at this exact second? Is the chair comfortable? Is the coffee hot? Is this conversation interesting? It lives in a continuous loop of moments, each about 3 seconds long. It's pure presence.
Okay, so the experiencing self is all about live in the now, and the remembering self.
The remembering self is the storyteller. It's the one that answers the question, so how was your vacation? It looks back over the timeline, it edits the footage, it keeps the most intense highlights and the most intense lowlights, and it pretty much deletes everything else.
And the conflict is that they want different things.
They often want diametrically opposed things, and here's the problem. We almost always make our major life decisions to satisfy the remembering self, often at the great expense of the poor experiencing self.
The classic example is the vacation, right?
Yes. Imagine you go on a 2-week vacation. For 13 straight days, the weather is perfect, the food is amazing, you're relaxed, you're having a great time, your experiencing self is in absolute heaven.
Sounds great so far.
But on the very last day, your luggage gets stolen and you miss your flight home. The last few hours are stressful, miserable, and chaotic.
Ooh, that ruins the whole trip.
Does it? It ruins the memory of the trip. When someone asks you later, how was it? Your remembering self will say, oh, it was a terrible trip.
Right.
But if you look at the math, your experiencing self had 13 days of bliss and only 1 day of stress. Mathematically, it was a fantastic trip. But psychologically, the ending completely colors the whole story.
This is the peak end rule, right?
Exactly. The remembering self is a bizarre accountant. It doesn't care about duration at all. It doesn't care how long the pleasure or pain lasted. It only tracks 2 things: the peak intensity of the feeling and how it felt at the very end. If the ending is bad, the whole story is bad in its memory.
Kahneman mentions this incredible study about colonoscopies that illustrates this perfectly.
Yes, this was back when colonoscopies were much more painful. They had 2 groups of patients. Group A had a standard short procedure, but it ended abruptly while the patient was still in significant pain.
Okay.
Group B had a longer procedure, more total minutes of discomfort, but the doctor deliberately engineered it so the pain tapered off very gently at the end. The last minute was just mild discomfort.
So Group B objectively suffered for a longer period of time.
Yes. Their experiencing self had more total pain. But when the researchers asked them later, how bad was it? Group B rated the procedure as much less painful than Group A. Why?
Because the ending was better.
Exactly. The remembering self completely ignored the duration and focused only on the finale.
This makes me think about social media. It feels like we're constantly making choices for our remembering self. Are we living our lives to have a good time, or are we living our lives to get good photos to show people we had a good time later?
That is the ultimate remembering self trap, isn't it? We endure uncomfortable shoes, long lines, crowded tourist spots, and forced smiles. Our experiencing self is suffering just to curate a timeline that tells a happy story for our remembering self. We're building a museum of memories rather than actually living in the moment.
Kahneman asks a really provocative question in the book. He says, if you could go on a fantastic vacation, but at the very end you had to take a pill that wiped your memory of the entire trip and you couldn't take any photos, would you still go?
And most people say no.
Right.
Which proves that we aren't chasing the experience of happiness. We are chasing the memory of happiness. We want to collect the badge. We want the story.
That is so deep. It makes you wonder if we are even capable of just being without thinking about the story we'll tell later.
It suggests we should be much more mindful of which self we're serving at any given moment. Are you making this choice for the person who is feeling it right now, or for the person who will be talking about it at a dinner party 6 months from now?
So what does this all mean? We've got this lazy system too. We're riddled with biases. We're terrified of losses. And we're living for a memory that might be a complete fiction. How do we actually use this stuff? Let's talk practical applications.
Right, the so what question. Well, in business, it changes everything about decision making. If you know that System 2 is inherently lazy and prone to confirmation bias, you can't just rely on being smart or having a good gut feeling. You need to build processes that force System 2 to do its job.
Like what? Give me an example.
The pre-mortem. This is a fantastic tool that Kahneman advocates for. Normally, before a big project launch, everyone sits around a table and says, this is going to be great, here's why we'll succeed. That's just groupthink and optimism bias.
Right, everyone's patting each other on the back.
In a pre-mortem, you flip it completely. The leader says, okay, everyone, imagine it is 1 year from now, and this project, was a total, unmitigated disaster, a complete failure. Take 10 minutes and write the history of why it failed.
Oh, I like that. That completely tricks the brain.
It forces System 2 to wake up and start looking for threats that confirmation bias would normally hide. It legitimizes doubt. It suddenly makes it safe for people to be critical because you're just role-playing.
Okay, that's a good one. What about in negotiations? We just have to be aware of anchoring.
You have to be more than aware. You have to be aggressive. If someone you're negotiating with drops a crazy anger, don't just politely adjust from it. You have to call it out. Say, that number is not a valid starting point for this conversation.
And what if they stick to it?
You might have to storm out of the room, metaphorically or literally, just to reset the anchor. Do not let the conversation revolve around their number. You have to introduce your own anchor to fight back.
What about for leadership and hiring?
You have to declare all-out war on the halo effect. Stop doing unstructured interviews where you just chat and get a feel for the person.
Because that's just a halo effect factory.
Exactly. You'll just end up hiring people who are good at interviews or who remind you of yourself.
So what's the fix for that?
Use structured behavioral criteria. Before you meet anyone, define the 6 key traits you absolutely need for the role. Ask the exact same questions in the same order to every single candidate. And score each trait independently before you form an overall impression of the person. It feels mechanical and weird, but the data is clear. It beats intuition every single time.
And for us regular people, just trying to get through the day without buying a timeshare.
It's really about developing self-awareness. You can't turn off System 1. It's always going to be there, making snap judgments. But you can learn to recognize the situations where it's most likely to make a mistake.
It's like having a dashboard warning light for your brain.
That's a perfect way to put it. When you feel that sudden surge of absolute certainty about something complex, that's a warning light. Confidence is usually a sign that you've built a simple story, not that you actually have the truth.
What's another warning light?
When you're rushing a decision because of a deadline that isn't actually real, when you are angry or hungry or tired, don't make big decisions. Your System 2 is depleted, and your System 1 is in complete control.
Sleep on it. It's the oldest advice in the book, but now we know the neuroscience behind it. It literally lets System 2 recharge its batteries.
And it lets the emotional storm of System 1 subside. It allows you to look at the data without the heat of the moment clouding your judgment.
So the final verdict on the book itself.
It is an absolute masterpiece. It is dense, I won't lie. It is not a beach read. It requires your System 2 to actually read it. But it is transformative. It moves you from asking, how do I do this? To asking, why am I even doing this? It gives you a vocabulary for the quirks of your own mind.
It's incredibly humbling, really. You read it and you realize you aren't the rational hero of your own story. You're just this messy collection of ancient shortcuts and emotional impulses.
But there is real power in that humility. If you know you are prone to error, you can build systems to catch yourself. You can design your life and your environment to protect you from the worst parts of your own brain.
You know, here's where it gets really interesting to me, the final thought. Kahneman himself says that even after writing this book, his own intuition didn't really change. He still makes the same mistakes in his own life.
And that's maybe the most important and humbling lesson of all. Understanding these biases doesn't make you immune to them. They don't just go away. You will still feel the sting of loss aversion. You will still judge people by their covers because of the halo effect. You will still overreact to the latest scary story on the news.
But now we can spot it. We can name it.
We can spot it. We can pause. And we can ask that crucial question, is this my System 1 talking? And that brief pause, that moment of metacognition, is the difference between a smart decision and a lifetime of regret.
So here's the question for you listening right now. The next time you feel absolutely 100% certain about a quick decision, whether it's a big investment, a relationship choice, or just a trivial argument you're about to win, can you pause long enough to ask yourself which system is driving the car right now?
And is your remembering self trying to write a story that your experiencing self is going to absolutely hate living through?
That's the question. Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.